Hello! Welcome to my kitchen. This will be where the bulk of your Professor in the Kitchen videos are going to be taking place. Actually, I think all of them are going to be taking place here, okay? So I'm just going to go through a couple recipes with you today from, dun-da-da, I'll show you, the amazing City Tavern cookbook, okay? So this is actually from a Philadelphia tavern. I think I featured it in the lecture videos for this week and talk about it. And they were open around the Revolutionary War era. There actually were a couple Declaration of Independence signers who footed the bill to open it up. It burned down in the 1850s and they've since reestablished it. Walter Stave is the head chef there now since it's been rebuilt. And they take actual recipes from founder journals and from founder estate paperwork, and they recreate those recipes in this book. Amazing. Got it on eBay for a steal. Yeah, so today we're going to be looking at 3 recipes. The first one, which I'm starting off with, isn't the main, it's just a little side dish, but I figured I'd go in order that I'm preparing these, and that is sweet potato biscuits. Sweet potato and pecan biscuits. So I don't know if you've ever had just regular old biscuits in the South, okay? It's going to be made a pretty similar way to that, which in a lot of ways is similar to making pastry, I found, but it's going to have the addition of sweet potatoes and pecans. Why? Because sweet potatoes were very easy to get a hold of, especially, from Virginia south, okay? This may have actually been from originally a Virginia cookbook, or even possibly the Thomas Jefferson estate, I don't know. Pecans also were an indigenous north. If you go into the southeast, tons and tons of pecan orchards. I've got pecan orchards all near my house. Once they get to producing age, they produce a lot of pecans. They're really easy to gather, they're really easy to store, and that's going to be critical for recipes coming out of the north. So the founding fathers would be eating a lot of things that are dependent on how they can best be stored. So when you look at cookbooks like this, you are going to see a lot of meats, a lot of pastries, and a lot of root vegetables. Root vegetables could easily be kept in a cellar that was kept cool with like layers of sand. You're not going to see a lot of fresh picked vegetables. The salad section in this recipe book is pretty sad, because unless you grew salad in your own garden, which a lot of people didn't have that much property to do that or time to do that, you can't really store lettuce for very long, even, as you know, in a refrigerator. So, but things like potatoes, carrots, parsnips and turnips, the root end, can be kept a really long time. Okay, so to start off here, we've got, and I'll give the actual measurements and the recipes, I'll list them for this week. But we've got some brown sugar, we have got some, salt. They also did a lot of cinnamon and allspice, which if you look at British recipes, and ginger, from the time that was really common for them to do as well, for them to use. I call them Christmas spices, but they used a lot of these Christmassy spices, which date back all the way from recipes from Tudor England. As I've talked about before, nutmeg was a big fad. This was like the one recipe that didn't have nutmeg in it. Not the biggest fan of nutmeg. And I'm also using baking powder. Now, I don't think baking powder and baking soda really came about, or at least not in public use, until like the 1840s, 50s. They would have used potash, which I don't even know how to get potash. So we're cheating a little, we're going a little bit to the mid-1800s, and I'm sorry, I'm going to use baking powder because, yeah, I don't want to poison my family with this meal, which is also going to be my dinner this Friday evening. Yeah, so you do a little dump of this in, shabam. And I don't think I put in the allspice. Yeah, we'll find that later. And then, they would have used just all-purpose flour, okay? I'm actually using a bread flour, which is, again, a little bit cheating, but if you want to get the equivalent of a bread flour without having to buy bread flour, then just put it through a sieve. It's just much more finely sifted flour, so it creates like a nice, softer but denser bread. So you do about 2.5 cups of this. These recipes, as I've talked about, make huge quantities. So I think even this one, I'm probably going to get at least a dozen biscuits. But the original, I'm cutting it in half, made several dozen. So I'm like, no, that's okay. I don't think I can eat that much. Meanwhile, I have got the one very large sweet potato that I've peeled and chopped into chunks, boiling away here on the stove. And then once you've mixed all these ingredients up, you add the sweet potatoes in at the very end, okay? So I'm gonna go right here and get my biscuit thingy. My very Southern mother visited me and was like, you don't have a biscuit thingy? She knew the name of it, I don't know. But it's this. You do not have to have this to make good biscuits, okay? It makes my life slightly easier, but to mix it up. But honestly, you can just use 2 forks. The key to a really good biscuit base is adding a fat and then making the flour, mixing it in to where it's seedy, okay? So I'm taking about a 1/2 cup of fat. This is vegetable shortening. They would have used lard, probably. Tasty lard. I do have bacon fat saved in a saddle can somewhere in here, but we're gonna go slightly healthier. Doesn't that look healthy? Delicious. And we're gonna use good old-fashioned Crisco, which also, if you're working on your tan, just smear that all over your body and go outside. We don't do that in the South, by the way. Please don't think that of my people. And we are a little bit lacking here in the Crisco department. So I'm going to add in a little bit of butter, which we'll do in a pinch. There we go. So you take this, or 2 forks also work, and you kind of work this in. And you're going to want to create sort of a cornmeal consistency. You want the fat to be evenly spread out throughout the flour mixture here. And so you mash and you do it. I'm not going to make y'all watch this, so we will fast forward to the biscuit preparation next. So now we have our fully mixed up, blended, kind of cornmeal-y looking flour here. I have mashed up our sweet potatoes. And we're going to put this in here. And really, if you boil these sweet potato pieces for 30 minutes with the lid on, that's plenty. You just want to be soft enough to mash. Mashy smashy. So we're going to mix those in. And then we're going to add in looking at how much cream. Like 1/2 cup of heavy cream. Okie dokie. Now you get to watch me open something with my teeth, which is another handy tool in the kitchen. Blech. Tinfoil. Okay. And you just don't want to over mix biscuit dough. So you want to slowly mix that in. Important to note, depending on the size of your sweet potato, it may get too moist, your dough. And you need to make a dough that's not sticky. Like when you make cookies, it's okay, you just drop them on the pan, right? And they can be kind of sticky, goopy. You don't want that with biscuit dough. So you can always just add little by little, kind of little handfuls of flour until you get it workable. Kind of like a pizza dough. Okay? And then once it gets to that point, then you're going to want to mix in your pecans. And you do that last, okay? I'm just throwing in 1/2 cup of pecans. And some people put them in as halves. You can buy the pecan halves at the grocery store, but I don't like my pecans that jarring in my biscuit, so I got a little food processor and I just blended until it's really diced up small. Okie dokie. And then at some point, I don't like getting sticky. At some point, you're gonna have to work with your hands with this because again, you wanna make sure that the consistency is not too sticky to handle. So this is, it's kind of verging on. Okay, this is workable. So I've got this big ball of dough. And you're gonna work those pecans in. But again, you know, don't work it too much. Look what I have created! Alright, so, blue. Oh my god. We're gonna put this right here. And you wanna kind of push this out to a consistency, not consistency, to about like maybe an inch thickness because they are gonna rise. Boom, boom, boom. I may regret doing this. I forgot to flour my surface. If you find it's like sticking really bad to the surface, then, you know, ball it back up, flour the surface, do it again. I don't have a biscuit cutter, so we're gonna get real fancy. I'm gonna use this little jar. High tech in the kitchen. And you're just gonna make little biscuits. There you go. And then I'm gonna stick them on this ungreased tray. Okay? Yeah, so I'm gonna, see, cut these little babies out. Oh my god, I'm gonna make so many biscuits. If you have too much dough, this freezes really well, FYI. So you can put out as many bits as you want, ball it up, put it in a plastic bag or plastic wrap, stick it in your freezer. Well, bam! So, anyway, I'm gonna bake these for 25 to 30 minutes at 350, and then I will come back to you, and we'll start on our main course. So, next up is our main, which is actually gonna be kind of a stew, and it is a West Indies curried lamb. Now, I will go ahead and tell you up front, I planned this out, and I was gonna get the lamb. But then when I was in the grocery store, it was just, I was like squishing it in the package, and all I could think of was the little lamb, and it's, I know it might be silly because I eat meat. I'm not a vegetarian, but I just couldn't get the lamb. I just couldn't do it. My husband has been making fun of me all day because I couldn't buy it. I can't eat baby things. You know, that's too much sadness to put in this. Too many sad animals. And a lot of the mains are in this cookbook are full of really sad animals, like multiple kinds of animals. There are meat pies in here that have got 2 to 3 types of meat in layers. It's like, let's eat all the animals smashed together. That my husband, who's British, is like, oh yeah, that's really good, extra meat. That's how we do it. So very English and apparently very early American to just have a whole bunch of animals in one thing. But long story short, I have turned this recipe into a pork-based recipe, and instead I'm substituting short ribs. So you can feel free to, if you decide to make this, to substitute, or you can be hardcore and do the lamb, okay? So anyway, now you may be wondering, this is West Indies curried meat, okay? And you might think, what the heck, that's Indian, that's curry. Well, the spice trade all in the Northeast was a huge part of the culinary world, even in the early Republic era. And any of these seaport towns, you're gonna have not just restaurants, but your average woman is gonna have access to curry powder, which was very popular and was being transported over from the Spice Islands and other areas through imports. So I just thought this was a really interesting recipe because it brings in that otherworldly aspect. That everything is not just going to be indigenous and British mixed up, that you're going to have these other elements starting to come in and creating this new American cuisine. So we're going to cook this in this thing which looks like it's from the olden days, and it could be. This is a very classic cast iron Dutch oven, okay? Yes, it's called a Dutch oven, but it's really just a big weird heavy pot, and it's made of iron. You can find these at Goodwill and stuff. The only annoying part is you have to season it, but you have to like bake it with nothing in it at a high heat with like olive oil to kind of make a greasy coat on the interior. Because if you don't, if you put anything acidic in there, wine, tomatoes, whatever, it actually leaches the iron into your food. I made this mistake when I first bought it, and I ended up with beef stew that tasted weirdly of blood and pennies. So yeah, if you do get one of these from wherever, good, like used, and it's not, you don't know if it's seasoned, just season it anyway. You can look up how to do that on Google. But yeah, this was like probably one of the oldest types of cooking vessels that we have, is what we call now a Dutch oven. It's cast iron, very pre-industrial. It would have handles so you could hook it above a fireplace. And because it is so thick, prior to the stove, it functions as a baking vessel. So you can put that lid on there and you can almost bake like dry meats in it, as long as you grease the bottom appropriately. So, in lieu of pork, or in lieu of lamb, as I said, I have done pork. Now you can't really see in here, and I don't want to tip it all out, but this has been marinating all day. I took the pork ribs and I marinated them in a red wine with curry powder, salt, pepper, and with onions and such. So I'm going to throw in a few tablespoons of butter and let that melt down. And then I'm going to take the meat out of the liquid and I'm going to saute it first, okay? And then once that's done, I'm just going to add right back in the marinade. Now, if you do decide to make this at home, please don't be like, finish cooking this and then say, oh, I forgot to add the marinade. You have to bring this marinade to a boil, or you might get very horrible food poisoning, which I do not want to be blamed for. So, once the meat has sufficiently browned in here, then you're going to pour all that marinade in. Then you're going to add chopped up and peeled a carrot, a couple of potatoes peeled and diced, and an heirloom tomato. I highly recommend don't get just the regular hothouse tomatoes, find heirloom, because these are going to be the closest to garden grown, which is what they would have had. I actually grow tomatoes out in my yard, but I didn't have any ready right now. And depending on your spice tolerance, you can add in, the recipe calls for habanero peppers. Yep, people like spicy stuff. I don't know why in my head I thought they would eat sad, bland stuff, but they really pack it in. I'm not doing habanero. I grow my own jalapenos, which are so deathly hot that I have to pickle them. So I'm going to be putting pickled jalapenos in. Once all of that's in, you're going to take just some chicken stock, and you're going to add in, I think, 1.5 quarts of chicken stock. You're going to let that boil for an hour. Now keep in mind, you just chop these up. You haven't added this stuff in, okay? You're going to boil that chicken stock and the meat and the marinade in this pot for an hour and a half. Then you add in the veg for the last like 30 to 45 minutes to cook. Otherwise it'll just turn into mush. And there you go. And it's served essentially like a stew. And stews were very much a part of British cooking. It was an easy way to use scraps. It was an easy way to stretch out food because you're adding water into it, you're adding broth, you can serve a lot more people, and it was quite easy to prepare. It was all, you didn't have to have a whole bunch of dishes to do this. You had this pot, you had fire. That's pretty much all you need, okay? So now we get to the very last thing that I'm cooking. We've got our stew here cooking away. The biscuits are done, cooling off by the window. And now we are going to be making our dessert, which is like an apple fig crumble, okay? We're going to be using dried figs, which dried fruit, super common at this time. And apples, if you were in the Northeast, apple was king. Even now we have a lot of apple producers in the Northeast, but at this point, all fall you would have so many different types of apples. It's really sad we don't have very many apple varieties today, but apparently back in the early 1800s, 1700s, varieties were in the thousands. So in this case, we're going to be using Granny Smith, just because they're not quite as sweet as other apples, so I feel like they're a better choice. And we just gonna throw them in this here pot. Just throw them on in there. 4. And kind of a rule of thumb is an apple a person, so I'm making 4 servings. Which is technically for 2 people, but don't judge me. I'm hungry. Ah! I lost a fig! Hold on. Oh no! So, we're putting all these in here, and then the key ingredient is going to be Madeira. Madeira is a type of Portuguese dessert wine. It was super, super popular for whatever reason in the day and came in on ships at the time. It was Jefferson's, one of his favorites. He wasn't a huge drinker, but he always kept Madeira around. I've never had Madeira. I'm not a big sweet wine person, but it's fortified. So you're just gonna just pour some of that in there. Too hot, too hot. And you're just gonna, like, you know, keep pouring. Keep pouring. About half a bottle, so that should do us. Pungent. And then you are going to add in sugar. So about 3/4 of a cup for 4 apples. So what you're actually doing here is you're making like a syrup. You're gonna let that bind, and you're gonna let the apple sugars and the fig and the sugar, and it's all gonna combine, and you're gonna reduce it down. And as it does that, it's gonna cook the apples. You're also gonna throw in a couple of cinnamon sticks to give it some seasoning, and you're supposed to traditionally put in an actual vanilla pod. People use vanilla pods, they would like scrape the seeds out and everything, but vanilla pods are so expensive, okay? It's like $12 for 1 pod. I'm sorry, I ain't doing that. So instead, we're just gonna put a little splash of vanilla extract. And you can pretend that I was hardcore and put a vanilla pod in. Just a few tablespoons of that. I always go a little extra on the vanilla because I like it. Sugar didn't all come out. Anyway, so you're gonna let that sit, stir it every once in a while. Bring it to a low boil, and then just keep it that way for 20-30 minutes until it reduces by half. And then all you have to do is pour it into a casserole dish, or you can use separate ramekins, and then add on like a streusel topping, which that's usually a combination of sort of ground up. You take butter with like brown sugar and a nut. So I'm going to use walnut. You blend it up. I'm going to use a food processor until it's like crumbly. Put it on the top of I'm using a casserole dish in this case. I don't have a bunch of little ramekins. Pop it in the oven, bake it, and then you can serve it with, I think it's creme and glacé. I don't think I'm pronouncing it correctly, which is like a vanilla custard, whipped custard. Or, if you want to be really, really, accurate to the period, you can use a Le Cool Whip. Because I'm lazy and also I hate custard. Okay, everybody. So now we have the final product that you can see us tasting here. This is some random Englishman that I dragged in off the street. Possibly dangerous. No, I'm kidding. This is my husband, Mark. Say hello.
Hello.
Yes. And he is a great person to try this food because what's important to note about all these recipes is they have a lot in common with traditional English dishes. So this is probably going to taste very familiar and foreign in a lot of ways to you. So that's one reason I wanted to bring him in for the tasting, to kind of get a British opinion on this early Republic spread here. So we have our stew, our West Indies curried pork. And then we do have these lovely pecan biscuits, pecan sweet potato biscuits. And then we are going to try a little bit of the dessert. We're just going to taste it for you and kind of tell you how it is. And then later we're actually going to eat it probably with like ice cream or Cool Whip. But we want to eat our dinner for real first. So we're going to do a little tasting for you. And then there you go. So let's dig in to this. So try the stew first. I did thicken this stew, by the way. You can thicken it with like a cornstarch slurry or even flour if you strain it properly. I don't like a watery stew. And it's 6 million degrees in temperature, so.
It's really rich.
You know what it tastes like? So in England, at like the fish and chip shops, they sell chip shop curry, which you think would be like, I don't know, like curry that you get at any restaurant, but it's not. It honestly tastes like gravy mixed with curry.
Yeah.
And if you ever go to England and go to a British person's home, they love gravy, and they put it all over everything. Okay, like traditional brown gravy, and that's what this tastes like.
Mm-hmm.
It tastes like chip shop curry.
Yeah, it tastes a lot like that.
Interesting. Okay. I haven't tasted any of the meat yet. Have you?
Yeah, I have some of the meat with the carrot.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
How is the meat?
It's really good. It's tender. It's tasty.
Awesome. If you don't like curry, you will not like this.
It's not that spicy though.
Mm-mm.
Like it's a little spicy, but it's not anything overwhelming. It's just very rich.
The recipe calls for a habanero pepper, which is really hot. And as I said in an earlier video, I didn't realize that they actually used that spicy of food. I always thought that it would just be really bland, but it's actually super rich, and it has a lot of spices, but not a lot of heat because I didn't add the habanero. I just put in a little bit of pickled jalapeno from my garden. So I guess if you make this at home, you can kind of go to town with it. Let's try the biscuit. My son's already eaten 2 of these, so I guess they're okay. These are pretty awesome. These are like cracked out Cracker Barrel biscuits. They're like, the sweet potato makes it super moist, but it's still fluffy and it still has that awesome like texture of a regular buttermilk biscuit. And then the pecan is a nice little crunchy touch. Awesome. Okay, now for the dessert. I'm gonna have to lick my spoon. I don't want curried dessert. So this is that apple fig crumble. And I noticed in the UK they do a lot of crumbles like that. When I would visit Mark's parents' house, that was a very common dessert. And in some ways it's kind of like the British answer to a cobbler. So it's got like this nice little streusel topping on top. Oh, I made an error when I made this. So you remember when I threw all the apples in with all the stuff and boiled it? You're actually supposed to do all the other stuff first and then pour it on top of the raw apples and then bake it. So our apples are a little bit overcooked, but I think it's fine.
Okay.
All right.
So you made about the apple. It's overcooked.
Yeah, but the flavor is really nice. That Madeira wine makes it super sweet. Yeah, really sweet dessert. Again, I would not have expected a recipe from like 1800 to be this sweet. I don't know why. I just didn't. What do you think?
Yeah, it's really, it's overly sweet almost. It's too sweet.
And I didn't add. I should have added a whole half a cup more of sugar into this thing, and I didn't because I was like that. I tasted it before I added the topping, and I'm like, nope, that does not need any more sugar.
So everyone died of diabetes back then, I guess.
Apparently, everyone got the diabetes, lost a leg, but no. So I would say overall, I'm very surprised by the Britishness that's still in place of all this. And again, these are Northeastern recipes. The potatoes are Virginia, but nothing deep south here. And I'm also really surprised by the richness. I mean,
It's very strong.
I mean, traditional English cooking is not this rich. I mean, it sometimes can be heavy with gravy, but certainly not this rich and full flavor, which I love. You might be like, no, it's too rich. You like it?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, strange British person, for commenting and being a part of our video experiment here. All right. And that's it for this week's kitchen video. Keep in mind that some of these things may come up that I talked about in the videos on the quizzes. Fair game. Major points. I'm not going to ask you like how much flour they use in the dessert. And yeah, I'll see you all next week.